Tonight at 10.
If you saw Barb steal your things from the house, I want you to raise your chin up.
Unable to speak, victims of the very people hired to protect your family.
What in the world? Who is this woman? What else has she done in my house?
How you can be sure the people who are supposed to help
It really made me feel violated for my mom.
aren't helping themselves. A 41 Action News investigation tonight at 10.
Hey, it's one of the toughest decisions you'll make, trusting someone enough to come into your home and care for a loved one.
That's true. There's a system in place that's supposed to protect you, but a 41 Action News investigation uncovered a questionable caregiver slipping through the cracks.
Ryan Kath is one family's shocking home care nightmare, and they're warning to others.
I love having that reminder of her big smile.
Lou Joris spent 40 years as a model in Kansas City, remaining ageless for decades.
She's 84 in this picture.
But gone are the smiles and the days of walking down the runway.
Okay, here we go, Mom. 1, 2, 3.
A fast and unforgiving disease has stolen all of Lou's muscle movement, even her ability to speak.
I feel like now I'm her voice.
Her son Peter is now her round-the-clock caregiver.
Doing okay, Lulu?
When her condition worsened last summer, Peter needed to find someone who could help while he was at work. A family friend recommended Barb Loseke, who visited the house for an interview.
Telling me everything I wanted to hear, basically.
So she almost sounds perfect.
Yes. That's exactly what she sounded like.
At first, Peter says he overlooked little red flags, but then...
When was the moment you knew?
I saw her wearing a shirt.
That shirt? A distinct Paris design Peter instantly recognized. He secretly took this photo and then rushed down to the basement where he'd spotted it a couple weeks earlier.
That's where the shirt was.
It was missing.
I thought, what in the world? Who is this woman? What else has she done in my house?
Peter then took this video of his mom, who could still see and understand everything going on around her.
If you saw Barb steal your things from the house, I want you to raise your chin up.
Peter eventually called police, who investigated Loseke's recent trips to pawn shops.
So all this is melted down.
One of the items sold for cash, his mother's 1941 class ring.
That really impacted me. It really made me feel violated for my mom.
But Peter's mom isn't alone. Last year, Loseke was a caregiver for Tilly McGann and KCK, hired through an agency before she had a criminal record. When family became suspicious, the owner of the agency placed hidden cameras in the home and caught Loseke red-handed. That Wyandotte County conviction was June 18th, the exact same time Loseke was working in Peter's home.
It wasn't even a speed bump to her. The fact that it didn't even faze her, it didn't stop her at all. Nothing stopped her.
And it doesn't end there. Even after the KCK arrest, 41 Action News discovered Loseke briefly worked with 2 different home care agencies. Background checks didn't detect the pending criminal case. A Leawood woman filed this complaint with the state after Loseke watched her elderly father Harold Benson for a weekend, apparently asking the full-time caregiver if there were any cameras in the house.
Financial abuse and exploitation is a growing issue.
Leslie Hale manages Adult Protective Services in Kansas. Bottom line, she says families need to do their homework. Hale recommends checking local court records, calling references, and searching state registries for abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Experts also recommend using a licensed caregiver agency because they should do all those things, and they have liability if something does go wrong.
A lot of people just think that if they do a KBI background check or criminal check, that's all they have to do. And there's really more to it than just that.
Our background check revealed yet another theft conviction from January in Johnson County, which means Lou Joris's case is now the 3rd felony charge against Loseke in the past year.
Ryan Kath with Channel 41.
We tried to get some answers from her.
Why do you keep stealing from elderly people you're supposed to be taking care
I'm not
of?
going to answer that question.
Why do you keep doing that?
I'm getting help.
What kind of help?
Counseling?
Stealing family heirlooms and pawning it off for cash? How do you do that?
I don't know.
Why do you do it?
I'm not going to answer that.
Why didn't you learn your lesson after the first time?
I don't know.
Loseke didn't have a good explanation, leaving Peter to wonder about all the things his mom saw,
Doing okay, Mom?
but is unable to tell him.
She really victimized her and violated her, and that's something that just stays with you.
Loseke is scheduled in Jackson County Court next week, and after we started asking questions, Mark and Krista, Wyandotte County prosecutors tell me they are now looking at possibly revoking her probation for their case. So we'll, of course, keep everyone posted on both of those situations.
Action News was the first to expose shocking examples of a questionable caregiver stealing from elderly victims' homes.
And now, as investigator Ryan Kath shows us, prosecutors are taking action against the woman with the criminal past.
Prosecutors accuse Barb Loseke of ripping off an elderly woman's jewelry and then pawning it off for cash. While she awaits her legal fate, they want to make sure she doesn't work in anyone else's home, something we recently spotted in this Roland Park neighborhood. Why do you keep stealing from elderly people you're supposed to be taking care of?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Why do you keep doing that?
I'm getting help.
Barb Loseke didn't have any explanation for her actions. We told you the heartbreaking story of Lou Joris, an elderly Kansas City woman who relies on the care of others. Son Peter provides that lifeline when he's not at work, but last summer he hired Loseke to help at the recommendation of a friend. Peter then discovered his mother's jewelry had been stolen and sold at pawn shops, including her 1941 class ring.
That really impacted me. It really made me feel violated for my mom.
Even more disturbing, Loseke had just been convicted for doing the exact same thing to an elderly KCK woman.
It wasn't even a speed bump to her.
Jackson County prosecutors are now trying to stop that pattern. A judge granted a request for a new bond condition that will prevent Loseke from working in anyone's home. It's something we noticed as recently as this week when we kept tabs on her.
Are you still working in people's homes?
Nope, I'm not.
What are you doing at 51st and Knoll? We've seen you pick up a child from school.
That's who I work for.
So you are still working in someone's home?
I'm just helping her out.
But you're working inside her home.
Doesn't matter.
Have you taken anything from her home?
Nope.
What do you have to say to the victims, Barb? We contacted the parent of that Roland Park home, and she seemed surprised when we revealed Loseke's criminal history. But she told us she didn't want to talk to us about it and declined to answer any other questions. We'll keep you posted on the case. I'm investigative reporter Ryan Kath, 41 Action News.
All right, a home care nightmare continues to grow.
Now, the 41 Action News investigators exposed a questionable caregiver with a history of stealing from the elderly. And we have uncovered yet another victim. Ryan Kath shows why Overland Park police are now investigating.
With a diagnosis of dementia, there are things Ed Harnett struggles to remember.
You know, it's like a real bad dream.
But there is one memory the 71-year-old can't seem to forget.
I don't even like to think about her.
He's talking about Barb Loseke. In January 2013, the caregiver was working at the house next door. One day, Loseke knocked on Ed's door to see if he needed any help.
And like an idiot, I said I could use some help.
Ed hired Loseke to drive him to appointments and to clean the house. But before long, he grew suspicious.
She was kind of like somebody in a jewelry store, you know, looking around all the time.
Ed's son, Brian, who lives out of state, heard stories about Loseke over the phone.
I remember him saying, she's really, seems like she's looking for where I'm hiding the good stuff.
But Brian also knew paranoia could be an early sign of his dad's disease.
I feel terrible now seeing that story that she actually was in here doing that.
That story was a 41 Action News investigation about Loseke's pattern of deceit. Just before working in Ed's home, hidden cameras caught Loseke stealing from an elderly KCK woman. And a few months later, prosecutors accused her of doing the same thing to Lou Joris, including pawning off her 1941 class ring.
It really made me feel violated for my mom.
When we questioned her, Loseke didn't have a good explanation.
Stealing family heirlooms and pawning it off for cash, how do you do that?
I don't know.
Why do you do it?
I'm not going to answer that.
Why didn't you learn your lesson after the first time?
I don't know.
Yeah, 601 day.
After seeing our story, Brian reviewed his dad's financial records. Over an 11-day period, he discovered 6 checks written to Loseke totaling $2,500. On January 31st, Ed wrote 2 different checks. And Brian says his dad also took out $2,000 in cash.
She definitely took advantage of him.
Nothing stopped her.
We showed our story to Ed, who realized he's far from alone.
I feel sympathy for them, you know, because she's a real con person. I mean, she is a real con.
So get this, Overland Park police did get a call when this first happened, but it's not why you might think. Turns out Loseke actually called the cops on Ed, claiming he threatened her. Family members now wonder if she did that to scare him off from pressing any charges. So Mark and Chris, as you can imagine, Overland Park police are now looking into what we just showed you. She's also awaiting a trial in Jackson County for one of those cases, and Wyandotte County prosecutors are looking at revoking her probation. So a lot of moving parts there. We'll, of course, be keeping you posted on all those.
And now a criminal caregiver exposed by a 41 Action News investigation has her day in court. Ryan Kath was there to find out what happened in front of a judge.
Here at the Criminal Justice Center downtown, Barb Loseke admitted she stole from a 91-year-old woman she was supposed to be caring for.
Doing okay, Lulu?
In the last few years, a disease robbed Lou Juris of the ability to move or even speak. Son Peter hired Barb Loseke last summer to care for his mother while he worked. But one day, Peter says he noticed Loseke show up at his house wearing one of his mom's T-shirts. Suspicious, he took this video.
If you saw Barb steal your things from the house, I want you to raise your chin up.
Pawn shop records reveal his mom's jewelry sold for cash, including her 1941 class ring.
I just don't understand how someone can sleep at night when they do that to someone in that kind of helpless condition.
41 Action News discovered Peter's mom isn't alone. Last year, hidden cameras captured Loseke stealing from an elderly woman in Wyandotte County. We also found other caregiver complaints and a separate felony theft charge in Johnson County. Our original story also caught the attention of an Overland Park family.
She was kind of like somebody in a jewelry store, you know, looking around all the time.
Ed Harnett has dementia, and family members discovered he wrote Loseke checks to clean the house, totaling $2,500 in a little more than a week.
Barb, anything you'd like to say to Lou Juris?
Loseke covered her head and avoided our questions when she spotted our camera at the courthouse, a different approach than our earlier encounter in a parking lot.
Stealing family heirlooms and pawning it off for cash, how do you do that?
I don't know.
Why do you do it?
I'm not going to answer that.
Why didn't you learn your lesson after the first time?
I don't know.
Nothing stops this woman.
Which is why Peter believes she's run out of second chances.
This person is a serial offender, and I think she's the perfect one to make an example of.
Sentencing is slated for November, and the decision will be entirely up to a judge. But prosecutors say they'll be asking for jail time. That could be anywhere from 1 to 7 years behind bars. I'm investigator Ryan Kath, 41 Action News.
And justice delayed in Jackson County.
The criminal caregiver admitted to stealing from an elderly woman who was unable to move or speak. Investigator Ryan Kath shows us how things took an unusual twist in the courtroom today. Ryan?
Yeah, Justin, Barb Loseke was the focus of a 41 Action News investigation. We've stayed on the story to let you know if she's punished. Well, tonight you'll have to keep waiting because she left in an ambulance before the judge could decide her fate. Loseke collapsed to the floor right as the victim's son testified about her crime. That brought the sentencing hearing to an abrupt end. Our camera later captured first responders taking Loseke from the courthouse on a stretcher and loading her onto an ambulance. As we told you in August, Loseke pleaded guilty to stealing family heirlooms from 91-year-old Lou Juris. She later pawned those off for cash, including her 1941 class ring. We also uncovered similar crimes in Wyandotte and Johnson counties, but Loseke received probation in those cases. Despite her condition, Juris was at the courtroom to face the woman trusted to take care of her.
Even though Mom can't verbally testify, I thought her physical presence was testimony itself for Mom to make a statement.
We just would like to have some closure. We'd like to prevent this woman from victimizing any other people.
And it's not the first time Loseke fainted. After her guilty plea in August, she also collapsed near the courthouse entrance and left that day by ambulance. Sentence will resume in 3 weeks and will, of course, let you know what the judge decides. I'm investigator Ryan Kath, 41 Action News.
Well, there's a woman who preyed on those who depend on the care of others. And tonight, the criminal caregiver at the center of a 41 Action News investigation learned her fate. Investigator Ryan Kath is live downtown where a Jackson County judge handed down punishment about 30 minutes ago.
And Krista, the prosecutor in this case, called the elderly woman one of the most vulnerable victims he's ever seen. And the judge agreed, deciding it's time for Barb Loseke to spend time behind bars. Jackson County Sheriff's deputies took Loseke away for a 5-year prison sentence. She left in handcuffs just moments ago. Now, the caregiver admitted to stealing family heirlooms from 91-year-old Lou Juris, who has a disease that's robbed her of the ability to move or to speak. Loseke then pawned those off for cash, and our investigation found Loseke had done the very same thing before. Now, despite that condition, Juris was in the courtroom today for what her son described as a victory.
So the bottom line is she is a serial predator, and she'll keep doing it again and again. And the victim, you know, who is a defenseless person, Mom wasn't able to stop her, to report it. And I think it was a pretty despicable crime, and I'm just glad that the judge clearly saw that and sentenced her to 5 years.
Now, as you might remember, this sentencing was actually supposed to happen earlier this month, but Loseke fainted right in the middle of that proceeding and left by ambulance. Now, this time there was actually a court-appointed nurse present in the courtroom, and Loseke wore earplugs throughout the entire proceeding. But despite all that, the message from the judge was loud and clear. We're live downtown. Ryan Kath, 41 Action News.